Hi, and welcome to A Sense of Wellness podcast, inspiring and empowering a healthier you. I'm your host, Susan Greeley, and I'll be diving deeper into the 4 pillars of wellness: sleep, exercise, nutrition, and stress management. It's now April of 2023, and April is Stress Awareness Month. So naturally, I'm happy to have a conversation today with an expert in the area of mental health who helps people use actionable tools to help transform and improve their lives from the inside out. My guest today is Madelaine Claire Weiss. Madeline is a Harvard-trained licensed psychotherapist, mindset expert, and a board-certified executive career and life coach with an MBA. Madeline is dedicated to helping people master their minds so they can maintain and enjoy satisfaction and success in all areas of their lives. She is best-selling author of the book, G.R.E.A.T, 5-Step Strategy for Work and Life. We'll be talking about that today. And Madeline is a former group mental health practice administrative director, a corporate chief organizational development officer, and associate director of the anatomical gift program at Harvard Medical School. She's been featured as a guest mental health expert on TV and radio, including NBC, Fox TV, Talk 4 TV, and she's written for Thrive Global, Authority Magazine's editors list, and CEO World Magazine. So I'm very thrilled to have Madeline with me today. She has widely conducted her well-received trainings to diverse organizations, including many law firms, Harvard Medical School, Legal Services Corporation, the National Association of Realtors, DC Academy of General Dentistry, AARP, the American Bar Association, and the Bureau of National Affairs in Washington, DC. She does currently work in private practice in the Washington, DC area. So Madeline, thank you again for joining me today. It's really a true pleasure and honor to have you with me.
It is a true pleasure and honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I know. I love how we connected. We could tell people. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your actionable advice to help people improve their personal and professional lives. We all need help in this area constantly. Like, I personally firmly believe that we all need to be constantly working on mastering our minds and our thoughts. And that is the way to help us get better at this thing called life. Right? So
For sure.
For sure. And because it is Stress Awareness Month, Madeline, and we see it, it's palpable. We hear how stress is soaring, stress and burnout. And I would love you to put some numbers to that for us, please. Don't you? Just, lay the grounds for all this work that you do, what needs to be done.
Yeah. Before we got on this morning, I have a presentation on this and I pulled off 3 of the slides. So I don't know if we're doing video or not, but there's a slide. So let me just tell you.
That up. Sure. I would love to. Wow. You'll have to say that for listeners.
There. Okay.
No.
So
thumbs it up.
So we have work-related stress. That's actually a thing now. WRS that you can Google. It's so serious that we now have a name for it, and it causes 120,000 deaths per year in the U.S. I understand it's something like 750,000 throughout the world. And here it's resulting in $190 billion in healthcare costs yearly. Then we have, for all manner of healthcare providers, for the allied health professionals, there's a 73% burnout rate reported in the month previous to whenever this was taken recently. And I do have references for all of these if anyone wants to have them later. For nurses, 43% burnout. They're simply exhausted. Physicians, burnout has hit an all-time high of 62.8%. And they're not getting a whole lot of love because now, for the first time in 20 years, 50% of us are rating the quality of the nation's healthcare below good, and 20% are rating it poor. So 94% of employees are reporting that they're feeling stressed at work.
Not just in their lives, but specifically related to work. So let's talk
specifically, right.
Right. How to help people, how to identify it and, again, take action to combat that. And we all talk about work-life balance. What does that even mean? I know you have very, very clear thoughts and advice. Yeah. So go
Do
ahead. Share your experience with this and
yeah.
teaching.
I don't love the word balance.
I know.
For that.
You told me.
In my book, I call it work-life quality.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like balance is too prescriptive and restrictive. It's almost like telling you how much of this and that you should do. And we need to be agile and flexible in that, in conversation and collaboration with the other people in our lives. And it's sort of like this beautiful puzzle that we all work out together. And I think balance doesn't do it, but I feel like quality does. I do.
Like both, by the way.
What?
I like both.
Tell me.
I think it's important to seek balance, because if you don't have that, the stress can become too heavy and you can't have to, like, just in general. I think it is important to, in my mind, and this is what's fun to talk about, when you do have even internal balance, you're able to balance and manage things in your life, have more ease. I think it's easier to get to the place where you can work on your mind and your thoughts if things are more in balance, which leads to higher quality of life in general. So I don't know, just some thoughts, but I'll let you continue because I'm so happy to have you here talking about this, honestly. And your book is amazing. And before we dive into your book, though, and those staggering numbers say so much of why there's so much work for you to do, I know you have a very special reason why this all even matters as much to you as it does. Can you tell us about that, please, Madeline?
I sure can. So when I was 15 and my father, who was a business owner, was 42 years old, he died suddenly of a stroke. And the doctors said it was a cerebral hemorrhage. But since I was kind of a mouthy little girl, still a little bit am, I went for years. People didn't talk with their kids about their feelings the way they do now, thank God. But I was kind of left to my own devices. And because of what they called fresh I went for years thinking that my daddy died of me, until there was this day at the cemetery where I finally broke down with my mother about how all my fault it was. And she said, "No, honey, it wasn't you. It was work." So I've had, how shall I call it, very sort of interesting and varied career, but it's no surprise that I've wended my way to now. If I can help one little boy or girl's mommy or daddy have that happier, healthier, prosperous, and productive life for themselves, and all the, I like to say, big and little people counting on them, I'm in. So that's
you gave me full body goosebumps on that one.
Yeah.
I really did think of that. So thank you for sharing that, Madeline. It is so important to be talking about this, to be having these conversations. And even if it just is in small ways, reaching a few people to make changes that can prevent that from happening. Yeah.
It wasn't only that it was a loss for our family. There was this standing room only funeral because he was such a pillar of the community. But I used to go to the business every Friday afternoon after school because it was attached to my grandparents' home. So I knew and loved the employees. I used to go up and down and hug everybody. So when he died, the business before too long died with him. And all of those people were out of jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of people being non-adherent with what the advice is to them in terms of their health, like, I'll get to it maybe. There are just so many people counting on each one of us that I really like to put that line under that.
And that makes it more imperative to make your own personal mental and physical health what I call your non-negotiable. Don't forego that afternoon walk or something that can take you out of the stressful work life and help you decompress, manage the stress, whatever it is, right? Like lifestyle habits, which is all I talk about. So it makes me think, though, we all have our stories and our experiences early in life and throughout life that not just make an impression on us, but they form and mold the paths that we take. And it sounds like, I mean, that there's kind of a pun intended, that background of yours led you to do great things. And great is right. Getting to great is the title of your book. And I am really grateful to have you here and talking about this. And I would like for you to share with listeners your 5-step strategy in the book. It's Getting to Great, the 5-step strategy for work and life based on science and stories. And we all love stories. The science is important. So there are so many case examples I'm sure you can share with us. Can you please share at least one example with us on what are the 5 steps and how you use them?
Yeah. So one day I said to myself, these people are doing great. My clients, whom I adore, and they're doing so great. And I thought they're all so different, one from the other in age and ethnicity and occupation and gender, and just so many differences among them. And yet they were all doing so great. I thought, okay. And my background and training is just as diverse with brain science and evolutionary psychology. And not everybody knows that I studied at Veda Vedanta for close to 25 years. So it's really kind of a broad and deep in pockets ways of looking at life and living. And I thought, so there's no telling what I'm pulling out of the toolkit at any given time. So I'm thinking, what is working? So I laid out all my cases, all my clients, and I looked for what was common.
Common thread.
And the 5 steps were what was common, no matter who it was. So imagine my delight when I realized it could break down into the acronym GREAT, because that's like my favorite word. And now it's really my favorite word. So the G, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. The G is for grounding. So when people reach out to me, typically they don't come to me and say, I want to have a great life. And I heard that if I work with you, I can have one. What they're more saying is they don't feel good and they want to feel better. They don't want to live like this forever. So it's this grounding in the belief that they really can have a great life and that they have everything they need to get them there. And as I said, they don't necessarily come with that grounding. So I hold that space for them because I know they can, because I've seen it over and over again. So I hold that space until they can step into it and own it and run with it on their own. So that's the G. The first line of the book is, a great life depends on a great fit between who we are and the environments in which we work and live. So if it depends on who we are, then we have to know who we are. And that's not necessarily who someone else said we should be, or not even necessarily who we always thought we should be, but some kind of R for recognizing what really makes us tick. Our interests, our aspirations, our values, our hopes, our dreams, our fears, who we are. And then once there is a better sense of that under the belt, G-R-E, we go exploring. And that's the E. So exploring different environments. I know when I was growing up, the environments that were deemed appropriate for me, like were so constricted, like what I would be when I grew up was so constricted. But there's a great big world out there. And there's so many ways that we can embrace it. So we go exploring. So people start imagining themselves in different environments, and they reach out to people who are already in those environments and talk to them about what it's like for them. In fact, Daniel Gilbert's Stumbling on Happiness says that people have a very hard time imagining what it will be like for them if and when. We think we're good at that, but we're not. And he said, we're really better off to ask other people who already are what it's like for them. Doesn't mean it'll be exactly the same for us, but it's better than trying to imagine someplace we've never been and know nothing about. exploring the environment also pertains to and you like this, I know, the internal environment, what's going on inside the head, the self-talk, we'll call it, which isn't always helpful. So a lot of work gets done on upgrading the internal environment as well. So I've had people who've made dramatic changes in their external environments, but there are also people I've worked with who have made the changes in the internal environment and fell in love with exactly where they are without changing much of anything on the outside. It all just started to look different through a different kind of lens. And when I'm finished, I can give you an example of that. So that's a little bit of la la land when we're imagining I could be this, I could do that. And that's like a dream world, and we can't get stuck there. So William James said that action doesn't guarantee happiness, but there's no happiness without action. So G.R.E.A. for action. And then as soon as we start taking action, if you're really doing something that's going to make a difference, there's going to be resistance probably. So the T is for, and you can take your pick when we were talking before about balance versus quality as a word. This is a really nice example too of picking a word that inspires and motivates and moves you. So you can either say taming the resistance or tending the resistance or tackling the resistance, whichever one of those helps you. I think now of resistance like gravity. So the people who brought us airplanes didn't try to get rid of gravity. They tried to understand it so they could either use it or work around it so we could fly. And resistance is the same way. Either tend it or tame it or try to tackle your way around it so we can fly. So that's the G.R.E.A.T, grounding, recognizing, G.R.E, exploring, acting, and then tackling, tending, taming, whichever one you like.
Fantastic. All right. So give us some examples of that, how you have helped people in getting to that point, because I can imagine there's a process there.
So I have so many great examples. You could just see.
I know. I can tell exactly who first comes to mind, who or what first comes to mind. It's fun to share.
There's a woman that I have actually, I want to make something clear. Sometimes people are in and out in 3 to 6 months, and then there are others who stay for years. Like I'm part of the team. I just want to be clear. Nobody stays for years because they're miserable, not getting better. They only stay for years because they're seeing one change after another that simply delights them. And this one person, this one wonderful young woman who comes to mind, she was working in space and defense here in the DC area and was single and thought that she was so independent that she would never, ever be able to share life with anyone else. So that was the environment in which she was living, very constricted with a work environment that was deadening to her. She really wanted to be on the West Coast in finance startup. And what happened is she just happened to meet this great guy. And what she did, talk about environment, when they got to the point where she was going to try living with someone else, she set up a corner like in the apartment that had her bookcase and her books and her this and her that. It was a really, really small space, but it was hers. It was like, God damn it, it was hers. So she started off there. Where she is now, she's married to this really wonderful man. They had their first baby about 9 months ago and are thinking about when they're going to have another. She's on the West Coast in a finance startup. What she's realizing about herself, so many people come to me and they're unhappy, and then they figure out all it really is the tree wants to grow, the bird wants to fly, and so do we. And it's not even necessarily sometimes it is toxic where they are, but it isn't always that. Sometimes they just want to grow. So even though she has gotten from there to a very different here, and it's gorgeous, she still is dreaming because she just loves to grow. So she's still is working on her what's next. And I'm thrilled to be on this journey with her and watch one transformation after another. In terms of the environment, it was interesting. She sent me a couple of articles the other day where she's trying to figure out how many different career changes make sense. Is it okay to, if you want to go a lateral move, is it okay to step back before you step forward? And there's like not a rule book from the olden days on any of that. So what she's doing is she's looking for voices who are saying things that make her feel good about so she's creating this environment of voices who are saying that what she wants to do is okay. So it's like really supportive of her. And it's not that they're telling her what to do. She's picking them out because she's aligned with what they have to say. And they're aligned with what she's feeling and where she wants to go in her life. So I'm just extremely excited for her future. She's probably going to own her own business at some point.
Well, if she listens to this, then she'll hear that I'm excited for her too. I love stories like that. And we all need support. And what I do and have done for many, many years as well, Madeline, it's so apparent that people do best when they have that ongoing support, even just a sounding board. And then it's easier to take action when you do feel, the voices around you are supportive. I love that. Well, the whole journey is amazing.
Incredible. And there's one after another. So there's one of my clients I see. She's a journalist. I see her every day on the television. And every time I see her, because she moved from one job to another and has since had a baby also. And every time I see her, I feel like,
yay, exactly. I think we all, that helped.
And then there was this man who I work virtually, and he was quite obese. And he was sitting in front of his unmade bed working with me. And he had big aspirations for himself out there in the world. And I remember the conversation we had where by some sort of an invitation from him, I wouldn't lay this on him if I didn't see that there was an opening. We talked about it being not a great look. And I just saw him in the news also. And also, I don't know how I get his Facebook, but I also saw that he has romance in his life. He looks like he dropped 200 pounds and he's a chief of staff, exactly where he always wanted to be. So these things are possible when we believe, as you know, that they are.
Well, I was about to say that too. I'm so happy that back to your G and the grounding, you help people believe it. And I'm a firm believer in visualization. So a lot of people get stuck there. They're not able to visualize things. And you started with that.
We do that.
So it comes full circle. And I think that that's so important for people to hear. If they're not able to visualize it themselves, people like you, Madeline, are helping them. And I would like to say I do too, helping them believe that it is doable and achievable. And that's the first.
Well, because you have seen it happen. They have not.
Right.
We used to call it like borrowing an auxiliary ego when they lean on your vision. And there are explicit visioning exercises, but you also mentioned the support. And I want to get back to that for a second. There's this 2.5-minute clip of Atul Gawande, who talks about when he got his own coach.
Oh,
I can send you that clip.
I'd love that.
It's fabulous. And the point he makes is that some people, they're like two different models. One is you go to school and you learn as much as you can, and then you're good to go and you do the best you can out in the world. But he said the other one is the sports model. And he talks about how all the GOATs, the greatest of all timers, they all have a coach, not because there's something wrong with them, because like
quite the opposite.
It keeps them in their peak performance to have an extra pair of outside eyes and ears who can see what you cannot. And I'm going to spare you my whole spiel on how limited our information is, unless you beg me, and then I'll tell you.
I will beg you. I know there's greatness within all of us. I really think that most people don't see it in themselves. They sense it, they feel it, but they don't necessarily see it. And the coach does. You do, right? So anyway, I beg you, share more.
Oh, you want to hear that?
Of course.
Okay, you asked for it. So the senses send about 11 million bits of information to the brain every second. Most of it is unconscious. That's number one. Number two, those 11 million bits are out of, what is it? 6 times 70 million zeros. Don't even try.
I know, you see me.
Don't even try. It's like 6 times 70 million zeros bits of information in the universe that the senses could be plucking from. So taking 11 million out of 6 times 70, whatever I just said, I can't even say it most of the time, bits of information. And then I just figure anybody who thinks they know anything at all is mistaken, because that is such a drop in the bucket.
It really is. I was lit up.
Yeah. So people, especially in the helping professions or people who are in positions of great responsibility and authority with a lot of people counting on them, feel like they need to know more than they possibly can. They feel like they need, or they feel like they do know. So it's called CEO overconfidence. It's called physician overconfidence. These people in great positions of great responsibility delude themselves into thinking they know more than they possibly can. And under stress, we turn inward more. So we're operating in a bit of a vacuum. And so your comment about the support of others is critical.
To take them out of that, right? Not just that, would you call it the CEO?
Disease.
Yeah,
I just submitted a paper. I had a paper on that published in CEO World magazine, and I just wrote one for healthcare that I submitted this morning somewhere. Yeah, we'll see. But I just think it's really important for people to know that as smart as we all are, and we're all real smart, it's limited in ways that really matter, and that there's a cure for that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's a cure for that disease, and it's each other.
Right. As I say, it takes a village. It does. Life, is not meant to be a path we take alone. So you did mention the vision exercises and other exercises. I know you have like some really tangible tools. I'd love for you to share some of those as well, Madeline, please. Whether it's, being or vision, whatever. So yes, please give us some of your tools.
There's an exercise, which is a 30-second mindset reset.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah. So what happens is when we start reacting, and it doesn't have to be, this is the hand model of the brain. This is Dan Siegel's hand model of the brain. So this is the amygdala. So when we start reacting, and again, I want to be clear, it's not necessarily negative. Even positive overstimulation makes this thing go crazy. Mm-hmm. And when this thing starts going bonkers, what it does is it takes the prefrontal cortex and it knocks it offline. So now you're acting from this lower level. Well, I don't mean you. One is acting from this lower level brain functioning with no access to the executive functioning brain. I want to be clear. I'm not saying that decisions should not have emotion in them. In fact, there are all kinds of cognitive studies that cognition is impaired if the emotions are not integrated. So this 30-second mindset reset actually does that. It calms this. It doesn't numb it or dumb it down. It calms this enough so that they can be integrated. And then this can say to this, I'm like really excited about what's going on here, or I'm like really nervous about I'm not sure what's happening here. Can you help me? And then this says, thank you for sharing. I got it from here. What it is this 30-second mindset reset. It's just amazing. Activates the parasympathetic nerve, which calms. Now, sometimes people hear calm and they get nervous because they don't want to go brain dead. Trust me, please. You won't. You will get clearer. You'll be empowered to use all of your faculties in a much more effective way by getting into that state, which takes 30 seconds. So there's a tab on my website at madelineweiss.com right across the top. And I think it says Power Breathe.
Okay.
And if your listeners want to click that, they will get the instruction for this little thing that does so much. There was this young man I was working with who had a really, really nice life, except that his mind was driving him crazy. He had this really, really, really active thinking. So we did this together at some point, and he just, when he was finished, he said, wow. It was like he took a psychedelic drug, something. It was that simple. In 30 seconds, he could positively feel just.
It's the power of the breath. I've done other podcast episodes on this, and a repeat of this information is important for people to hear. It is that powerful and transformative. 30 seconds of your life, Madeline. I mean, it's nothing. You do that even twice a day. So 1 minute out of your day.
Anywhere, anytime, for any reason, by anyone. Like you could be sitting in the boardroom.
Yes. Yes.
You could be sitting in a meeting. Everyone has to breathe anyway. So, right?
So, breathing, we hope.
Right? So nobody even knows or needs to know. Or if you're leading the meeting, you could have everybody do it at the beginning of the meeting, which brings me to another exercise that I like, which is in the book, focus and release. Humans have a really hard time transitioning from one activity or event to another. Mm-hmm. And what we do is, because we have trouble coming to completion with whatever came before, we carry it around. It's like a sack of rocks on our backs that keeps getting filled with the next activity that we didn't come to completion on, and the next, and the next, and the next. And then we wonder why we're exhausted at the end of the day. So this focus and release is an exercise that sort of trains the mind to be able to put something down. I was remembering being on what they called an exercise when I was studying Advaita Vedanta. It's kind of like a retreat, and they would have us doing service was a very big component of it, which I am very grateful for because I can feel how ingrained that is in me now. And I love that feeling. But I remember, so I'd have like a paintbrush and I'd be painting woodwork, and then they tell us that we were done, and I'd be mouthing off like, well, I'm not done. I still have, and they would look at me very sternly. You are finished. To make the point of how difficult it is. I don't think people realize how difficult it is. And then they carry it around and around and around. It's heavy.
It is heavy, and becoming more aware is really important in order to release it. Thank you so much for sharing that. The focus and release exercise. I encourage listeners to go find that on Madeline's website, which we'll mention again in a few moments here. It just thinking about it as you're saying this, because of all this burnout, you showed us this, talked about it and showed me that crazy statistic at the beginning of how damaging and detrimental the stress is, work stress. So if you can release it in a simple tool like that, your exercise, who wouldn't we, right?
There's something else I want to throw in there. It's a favorite question. Before you let it go, I like to ask, and I like to recommend to ask this question. Is there something to be done here? Mm-hmm. Car coming. Is there something to be done here? Get out of the way. Mm-hmm. It isn't always just let it go and try not to think about it. Is there something to be done here? Sometimes there is, but you've already done it and you're just ruminating and obsessing. Sometimes there is, but it's not yours to do and it needs to be delegated. Sometimes there is and it's yours to do but not today. Maybe later, maybe tomorrow. Write that down so you'll remember to do. And sometimes there's nothing to do except to tolerate the discomfort, like of me putting that brush down. I can't tell you how much I did not want to put that brush down, but tolerating that discomfort to move on when that's the right thing to do.
Right. Wow.
So all these fine distinctions that can be discovered with that question. Is there something to be done here?
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Because sometimes there is, and sometimes there isn't.
Right. And helping people discern that is really the key point there. Thank you. I love all of this. You know that. Do you have any other favorite go-tos or an empowering tip? You've already given us some really wonderful ones. Were there any others that you want to share to help us master our minds daily? Anything that comes to mind?
Well, I noticed in your other podcasts that you have a question.
Oh, you want me to? Yes.
And I think my answer to the question you did ask also answers the one you were going to ask.
I'm about to ask. All right. So let's get to it. I like how you're tying it together. That's beautiful. I do ask every single guest, what is one thing you're grateful for today?
So one of the things that I learned in the Advaita Vedanta studies is this concept of good company. And good company doesn't apply just to people, although it very much does. But it's the books you read, the music you listen to, the food you eat, the wine you drink, very much the people in your life, and also very much the thoughts in your head. They have to be good company too. So when I knew that you were going to ask me what I was grateful for, it's the good company, including and especially the people. By the way, when we're little, we don't get to pick the people. When we're big, we do more. And so I think it's really important to underscore the very best, back to the word quality, of relationships for social and intellectual reasons as well. I'm just really grateful for all the good company in my life, including and especially my amazing children, grandchildren.
I know. We were talking about grandchildren.
Yeah. And you.
Thank you, Madeline. I am too. And as I'm sitting here listening, I'm thinking about being grateful that I have the opportunity to hear people like you and learn from you, my fabulous guests that I bring on. And it does also help us all spread more love. Honestly, it's really about that, isn't it? And loving your life and surrounding yourself with the people you love. So it's all the same in my book.
I was talking with one of my clients who's finally sort of got out of the box, took a leap and opened herself up to more good company. Mm-hmm. And she met a group of women on a conference that she was really excited about. But she told me that she had one concern, which was they kind of clicked on what they thought was wrong with the world. And she was wise enough to say, I'm afraid that's where it's going to be. And I don't want to be there. I said, so maybe you can explore the potential for both of you growing together out of that, like outgrowing that together. So, yeah.
Giving them that alone is empowering because we all have the power to change and create our lives, and empowering others to, again, believe it and know how to do that. You know, it just opens up a whole new world. These conversations light me up. You can then share it with others. Oh, Madeleine, this is so fun talking about this. And I think just helping people reframe a lot of what's going on in the world and in their own personal lives. So that internal environment, the external, and how much really is within their own power. It's a beautiful, fabulous thing.
How much is possible?
How much is possible? And you shared, like, it really sounds limitless. It is endless. I would love to send listeners to your website again. So that's one final question. Where can listeners find you? And those exercises, the focus and release, the power breathing, your 5 steps.
Okay. So MadelaineWeiss.com
Madelaine.
Yeah, right. I don't know if it works if we don't spell it right. It's kind of a complicated spelling. Yeah. So it's MadelaineWeiss.com, MadelaineWeiss. There's the power breathing tab there. The focus and release exercise is in my book. There's a button on the top part of the website that you can click to get to the book. There are also online courses there. I want all your listeners to know that I am offering I call it a strategy session, because I like people to know that the framework is that in the schoolyard, in our families, we came up with ways of doing our business that are sometimes misused and overused. And so it's like a toolkit that we're going to put more tools in. And to me, that's not mental anything except strategy, getting from here to there, what's it going to take and what's in the way. So I offer free strategy session to everyone. And there's a button for that there also. So everything's on the website, MadelaineWeiss.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that, Madelaine. Thank you for sharing all of your wisdom and your experiences, your stories, the science, pulling it all together for people to give them really these simple yet powerful tools. And that's what this is all about. You really have inspired and empowered me during this conversation. And this was really fun. I would love to have you back.
My pleasure. I would love that.
Thank you.
You are a treasure. So
she's going to make me cry at the end of this. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome.
Happy spring.
You too.
Thank you for taking time to join me and listen to this episode. You can find more information and subscribe to the Sense of Wellness podcast on our website at ccphp.net/sens. This show is brought to you by Castle Connolly Private Health Partners, a concierge medicine organization that partners with and supports exceptional physicians to deliver an unrivaled experience of comprehensive, collaborative, and attentive care for a preventative approach on health and optimal well-being for members. Be sure to listen in next time to the Sense of Wellness podcast, and remember, simple daily habits matter most.